Imagine living in a university dormitory for months with someone you thought was your friend, only to realize that everything you believed about him was a lie. What if the person you shared a room with, someone you trusted, might not even be real or was never truly there? This is the story of Najeeb and Nizar, set in the year 1962 at the University of Damascus dormitories in the bustling capital of Syria. Najeeb was a 20-year-old student in his second year at the Faculty of Commerce. He came from rural Damascus. His father, Professor Abdul Razak, had sent him to Damascus from Sweda to continue his education, intending that Najeeb would eventually return home to manage the family business. Najeeb was a brilliant student, diligent, ambitious, and careful about his life. To save money and be closer to the university, he decided to live in the dorms instead of renting a nearby apartment. At first, he thought he would have a room to himself, which would allow him privacy and focus for his studies. However, his plans were immediately disrupted. Najeeb discovered that he would have a roommate, a law student named Nizar. Najeeb was not pleased. From the first moment, he noticed that something about Nizar was deeply strange. Nizar never spoke, rarely looked at him, and kept to himself entirely. Their schedules never matched. They never attended classes together, never studied together, and barely communicated at all. Najeeb noticed that every morning, without fail, Nizar had already left for class, sometimes even before the dawn prayer. Despite these unsettling signs, Najeeb tried to focus on his studies and ignored his growing unease. But little by little, his doubts and fears grew. Nizar's behavior was not just quiet or reserved, it was unusual, almost unnatural. His movements, his gaze, the way he appeared and disappeared, it all seemed eerie. One evening, as Najeeb was immersed in his studies, he suddenly saw Nizar in his room, standing silently. He hadn't heard the door open, hadn't sensed him enter. When he tried to ask Nizar about it, there was no response. The silence was suffocating, and Najeeb felt an overwhelming sense of fear. From that night onward, the terror escalated. Najeeb began to notice things he could not explain. One night, he saw Nizar standing in the hallway, his eyes glowing red, his hands surrounded by flames, and dark smoke rising from his body. Najeeb froze in place, unable to move, as if some invisible force held him still. The clock on the wall showed 1:30 a.m., and it remained frozen at that time. Najeeb lost consciousness, and when he awoke, the clock had barely moved, confirming that what he had seen was not a dream. Nizar had vanished, but the fear remained.
Najeeb confided in his friend Amjad, another student at the university. Amjad tried to calm him, explaining that stress, overwork, and anxiety could create vivid hallucinations. He told Najeeb to recite the Quran, avoid staying alone in the room, and not to believe in superstitions. Najeeb tried to follow Amjad's advice, but the presence of Nizar haunted him day and night. He began to question whether his roommate was human or a spirit, possibly a jinn, as he had heard terrifying stories from the countryside about spirits that could harm anyone who approached them. The nights became unbearable. Najeeb began hearing crying, laughing, and strange noises from the corridor. He saw Nizar with his glowing red eyes, surrounded by fire that did not harm him, sitting in the middle of flames that should have consumed him. Najeeb tried to reason that it was a dream, a hallucination caused by his anxiety, yet the fear was real. One day, Najeeb decided to investigate the truth about Nizar. He learned that Nizar's real name was Nizar al-Sharbasi, a law student who had stopped studying in the third year. Nizar had been known for his kindness, his respectful nature, and his close relationship with the dormitory's janitor, Uncle Yunus, who loved him like a son. But Nizar's life had ended tragically. One day, his body was discovered in the dormitory, surrounded by books from his law studies. There were traces of blood, but his body bore no wounds. Among the books was a mysterious book on magic. Uncle Yunus could not read it, so the cause of Nizar's death remained a terrifying secret. Najeeb realized that the Nizar he had been seeing was the spirit of a dead student. This spirit appeared to him, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, sometimes threatening him with unseen forces. Despite the terror, Najeeb stayed in the dormitory, compelled to uncover the truth. He began using the Quran, incense, and water to protect himself, reading verses aloud and sprinkling water in the places where Nizar had appeared. For the first time, Nizar did not show up. But the dormitory kept its secrets. Objects moved by themselves. The clock stayed frozen at 1:30 a.m., and a picture of Nizar appeared in Najeeb's room, its eyes seemingly moving and following him. Najeeb's fear deepened with each passing day. The reality was worse than any nightmare. Najeeb tried to speak to Amjad about what he had seen, but Amjad could never witness the supernatural events himself. Najeeb's life became consumed with fear. He could not leave his room, he could not sleep, and he could not study with anxiety gnawing at him. Eventually, after the terrifying occurrences and the revelation of Nizar's death, Najeeb decided he would never return to that dormitory after his exams. And yet, the question lingered, haunting him as he left. If Nizar's spirit could appear to one person, could it still be watching, waiting, and wondering why someone dared to uncover its secret? What if the spirit's presence was not just a warning, but a challenge that would continue to follow anyone who entered the dormitory unseen?